Welcome. We'll get started shortly. Before we begin, here's how to earn continuing professional education credit for attending this session. There are no polling questions or attendance checks. Instead, you will demonstrate your knowledge by taking a brief multiple-choice quiz using the Earmark app. Visit earmark.app in your web browser. You can also download the mobile app by scanning the QR code on the screen. Log in, or if you're new, create your free account. Be sure to use a valid email address because that's where we'll send your course completion certificates. From the home screen, scroll down to find the course. You can also tap the magnifying glass icon to search for the course. Tap on the course artwork, then the Enroll button. On the Course tab, you'll find the recording and quiz questions. Complete the quiz to earn your CPE certificate. It takes us a few days to create the course on the app, so if you are attending this session live, please wait a few days. We'll email you a link to the course when it is ready. If you have questions or need help, email us at support@earmarkcpe.com. And now, on to the event.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar, The Problem to Solve Your Key in Technology Evaluation. I'm Joel from the Earmark team. If you have any questions or concerns, use the comments section. And with that, I will turn it over to today's host, Will Hill.
Well, thank you, Joel. I appreciate that. And welcome to all of you who have taken your time today to sit through this session. And I hope you will be able to glean some valuable information as we go through. Now, I think a lot of times things sound easy and simple, but there's more complexity. You know, currently living in a rented house, and prior to this, in the house my wife and I had, we had a large garden out back. And after a summer of not having a garden with some of the fresh vegetables that we enjoy, we said, hey, let's just put a couple of raised beds in and we can grow some vegetables until we get back into a permanent house location. And it sounded so easy. And then we went to execute and it was like, hold on, what supplies do we need? What kind of wood material should we use to create the barrier? Do we reinforce it with brick around the outside? How high do we go? What kind of barrier do we put between the ground and the raised bed material? Should it be the same? Do we let the soils mix? What's our mix of soil versus fertilizer? All of these things. There were so many choices. It sounded so easy on the front. Hey, we'll just put a couple raised beds in and be ready to go. But it's deeper than that. I think the same is true with technology evaluation. It sounds so easy. We'll look at a couple software pieces, make our choice, and go from there. But there's just much more to it. And hopefully today, we're going to go through, and I'm going to give you some practical things you can say, hey, I now have a guide that I can use as I walk through technology evaluation and to navigate through what is sometimes a very complex process. My name is Will Hill. I'm the owner of Will Hill Consults, and I've spent over 23 years working with tax and accounting firms across the country. I spent a lot of that time at a large software company known as Thomson Reuters. I've been in physically over 400 different firms implementing software, doing business process evaluation, consulting with them on their commercial and client strategies. And so just a lot of experience, seeing a lot of different combinations of tools, and hope to be able to bring to bear for you that experience in a way that makes sense as we look to evaluate technology and make some good choices today. So this is how we're going to handle our conversation as we dip through. We're going to start with the premise that we call the problem to solve. We're going to get in and say, what does that really mean? How do I use that as a guiding principle? And then we'll apply that against current technology and future technology. We'll kind of wrap up by saying, what is the impact to our business as we take this tact and approach to evaluating technology within our firms? So with that, we're going to go ahead, buckle up, and dive right in. When we talk about the problem to solve, I think it's important that you identify what problem it is you're solving. If we are starting our evaluation of technology without a problem to solve in mind, we're doing it wrong. We're doing it wrong. Okay. Now, sometimes we need to think about that word problem a little bit differently. Oftentimes when we hear the word problem, we instantly think that there's major pain going on. We've got a big issue. People are trying to work through something. We have to do extra. But sometimes our problem to solve can also be a positive thing, right? Hey, there's been a lot of growth in our local economy. We have more business clients that we could serve and we're not serving. That could be our problem to solve. A new regulation has come into play, and we've got to help our clients navigate that regulation. That could be a problem to solve. So I don't want you to hear problem to solve and think a technology solution is broken. I want you to think broadly in terms of the business. What problem are we solving? Because first of all, that problem has to be real. If we go chasing technology to solve a problem that isn't real, we're going to end up wasting a lot of time and resources. How do we know it's real? Well, we know it's real if we can actually describe the problem to one of our colleagues or a peer if you're in a sole practitioner environment, and they nod their head and go, yes, that's right, it's a problem. If we can't describe the problem in such a way that someone else can understand it, they go, I don't understand what the problem is here. Well, how is that really a problem? Then we have not yet been able to truly identify a real problem to solve. And we've got a little bit more work to go yet in defining that problem. I'm not saying you don't have a problem. I'm just saying we have a little bit more work to do in defining that problem. Part of that issue there is that it may not be focused enough. So our problem to solve must be focused. If we are trying to solve a problem that's very broad and wide, when we go to apply technology against that problem, we're going to struggle to pick a solution, or we're going to struggle in picking the elements of a solution that matter most. I understand that many times problems are multifaceted and that there are different layers and pieces to them. But a lot of times when we get into problems, we start going, oh, well, we need to solve this workflow that we have within our, maybe it's our client accounting services world, and we're trying to solve the workflow issue internally and knowing who's responsible for what pieces. Well, that could often spiral into a lot of different areas that we could improve on. But my challenge to you is, how do we get focused, saying which part of this problem we're really trying to solve? It's got to be focused in. I'm not trying to solve it in the example I gave here. If I want to solve for knowing when staff A is done and staff B needs to pick up their task and work, if that's what I'm trying to solve for, let's not get into the world of, well, sometimes the clients don't know when to send this information to. That might be related to client accounting services, but is it really part of that focus problem that we're solving? Again, we can get into areas that touch this issue and that are important and relevant, but if they're not the problem we're solving, I want to step away from it. Make sure that we're extremely focused. The third element that I want to make sure we hit on here is that this problem to solve is measured. We've got to measure it. As I look back in my career and going through leading a number of internal changes in an organization or working through services to help firms transition, I remember early on as I was doing this, I would just get excited and say, oh, we're going to make a change. It's going to be impactful. And I would not decide ahead of time what we're going to measure. Or if I did decide what we're going to measure revenue. We're going to really drive revenue. Well, that's great. What does that mean? Drive isn't enough. Up is a direction, it's not a measurement, right? Hey, we're going to increase revenue by 5%. Okay, now we're talking. Now we've got something that's measured. Or we're going to decrease the amount of time it takes us to execute this work by 15 minutes a month per staff member. Okay, great. We've got a measurement that's there. So your problem to solve, it needs to be real. It needs to be focused. but it also needs to be measured, right? It needs to be measured. Time, dollars, it doesn't matter which one, but we need to be able to measure it. We've got to be able to measure it now and then after. So we can say, does the technology change that we made, is it really helping us achieve our goals? Our goals are emotional and arbitrary if we don't have measurements associated with them. So we've got to measure them. Finally, our problem to solve needs to impact the team and or the client's experience. Okay? If the problem we're solving is just impacting you alone, with all due respect, it may not be a big enough problem to chase after. It's not that you're unimportant, but there are a lot of things that we need to improve in our firms. And if this issue is not impacting the client experience, it's only impacting one person. I'm not saying it's a real problem. I'm just saying it's probably down on the list of things that ought to be prioritized. Right? Now, if that frustrates you, I want you to lean into that problem a little bit more and say, am I really the only one that struggles with this problem? Is it really only impacting me? Dig in, go through the workflow and the scenario a little bit more and see if it touches the person who touches work before you. Does it impact the person who does the work after you in the workflow line? Does it impact client experience or client expectations? Right? If it doesn't, hey, it's just a lower priority of our problem list. And by the time we go and attack it, hopefully a lot of other problems have been solved. It could be that by the time we go to attack this problem, solving other issues that impact the team and the client experience have made your problem actually feel less of an issue. Okay. Again, I'm not here to minimize the fact that it's a struggle or a problem or a challenge for you. I'm just trying to say that we have to prioritize where we spend the time. And I want to prioritize things that impact more than one person and or things that impact the client experience. That's where we're going to have the greatest amount of value out of chasing this problem to solve. Let me pause for just one moment and challenge you to write down a problem. What is this problem that you're facing or that you hear your coworkers or team members talk about? If we're talking about it, it's probably real. But then is it focused? If we think it's focused enough, can we narrow it down and just challenge ourselves to lean into that focus just a little bit more? Then I want you to think about measurement. You may not have to right now in this moment say, oh, I know exactly what the measurement is, but just maybe a classification of the measurement. Is it around time? Is it around communication levels or communication frequency or responsiveness? Is it around dollars, either expense dollars, revenue dollars, profit dollars? Okay. What's that measurement going to be? When we go to communicate internally, either to get buy-in on chasing the solution or to get buy-in for making the change actually come to life, this measurement's going to be a key piece to say, hey, this is how we know we're going to be successful. This is the pain that it's causing right now. Here's where the success line is. And that's what we're chasing after with this problem to solve. And you will find out as you go through this, does it impact the team and or the client experience? And when I'm communicating this problem to solve, I want to make sure we talk about that. Now, speaking of impacting client experience, my voice today just might be impacting your client experience. I've been out having a lot of fun with some teenagers lately and trying to be impactful in their lives. Apparently, that's impacted my voice. So I'm going to keep working through that. I might sip some water as we go through this to try to tighten that up a little bit, but bear with me. Hopefully, you've written down your problem, and we're going to go ahead. We're going to chase into our next item. Now that you've got a real problem to solve as we go through. Now, this is going to mean something for the technology you have in place today. Just because we've identified a problem and there's a technological component with that problem, it doesn't mean that we must instantly go search for new technology and new solutions. What we have may actually be sufficient. In fact, if we're able to solve the problem with current technology, it's often faster, cheaper, and has less obstacles internally. What do I mean by faster? Well, hey, I don't have to go through, procure something else, have a learning curve for it. We've already got the solution there. Cheaper, man, many times I've been with firms, they've looked at purchasing a whole new solution when instead there's a component of a product they already own they just aren't using or aren't using well. And so the time and dollars it takes to reconfigure that solution is much less than the acquisition cost and again the learning curve of a brand new solution. Pardon me. We also then face less obstacles, right? If you're a firm that requires approval on certain levels of expenditures using current technology, hey, less obstacles that way, right? Um, a lot of times we've got personal bias against other external vendors, less things I have to worry about from an obstacle perspective because we're dealing with the vendors that we've already chosen to work with as a firm. I want to tell you in this to watch for assumptions because our strongest assumption that comes into play is I already know my firm management tool super well, my workflow tool inside out. It can't do it. Well, here's when we need to watch for the assumption is that now we've narrowed in our problem to solve. It's more focused and it's specific and it's real. So I want to go in and say, wait a minute, maybe I haven't leaned into the workflow tool from the angle of this particular problem. Maybe I haven't leaned into my firm management tool in the right way, my accounting management tool. Whatever it is, I've got to watch that assumption that, hey, if I own it, we already do everything with it, right? Let's ask some questions. Let's bring in others in the firm that also use the tool. Say, hey, here's what we're trying to solve a little bit better. In product X, have you seen some things that maybe we could look at and use a little bit differently? Or maybe we need to not name the product. Maybe we need to pull in the people that work through that process and say, using what we already have, how could we solve this problem? Here's what we're trying to solve for. Here's the measurements that we're looking at. How do we bring that in? Okay, so watch for your assumptions. I would also encourage you to work with your vendors. Now, for some of you, that's a bit of a scary thought, right? And sometimes there is a perception and reputation of the minute I open up to a vendor, they're not going to work on this. They're just going to try to get me to spend more money or buy a solution, right? But by and large, your vendors, your technology vendors, your greatest asset that you are to them is recurring revenue. So if we position this as a matter of, I want to look at how I can use your tools more deeply so they will sustain me longer, now all of a sudden the solution's valuable to them without feeling like they're going to want you to buy another module or component or tool. Okay. But if we can't define the problem we're solving in a very focused way, we're going to have trouble. Again, this goes back to we've got to be able to define the problem very well. People that end up frustrated with their vendors in this process, later on they go, oh, I didn't go back and define what I was working on. I've worked with a number of different clients of mine in the last couple of years where they have made a choice before I've gotten involved to switch over from vendor X to vendor Y. Okay. And I've seen this happen in both directions. So we're really excited because now we're going to be able to do this. Because I know both vendors very well, I look at them and say, hey, that's great, but I got news for you. I could have done it in the other tool. And they just look at me blankly. I said, hey, you're past the commitment line. And sometimes there's a negative emotional connotation with the existing tool, and you feel like you've got to change it to solve the problem. And there's some rationale there. I understand that. But I want you to be aware of this when you switch from one tool to the other and the first tool could have done it. Don't just assume that now that we have a new tool in place, people actually pay attention. People didn't use the tool the way they could have before. It's going to require a behavior change, not just a tool change to execute and get what we're looking for. So again, this is why we've got to be very focused on the problem so we can communicate why we're making a transition, what we're looking to get out of the transition, and what the impact is to the team and or to the clients. That's going to be important internally, but also the vendors to know, hey, can my current tool solve for this? Are there pieces we're not using that would allow us to solve for this particular pointed problem? The more pointed you are, the less susceptible you will be to a vendor going, yes, but also look what we can do now with AI, because they're all going to do stuff with AI and show you something fancy that looks cool and might add some value to the firm, but it's not part of the problem we're solving, right? So from a current technology perspective, I want to really dig in there, okay? I also want you to be open in conversation to others who are solving with a similar technology stack. To me, this is where there's value in associations, whether they be state societies or they be some of the other accounting firm associations that are out there and exist. Maybe there's forums online that you're a part of, and dig into tax Twitter, all those kind of things that are out there, and say, hey, here's the tech stack I've got. Here's the focus problem I'm trying to wrestle with. How are others doing this, right? I can promise, I can pretty much promise that the problem you're facing, you are not the first one to face it. Now, you might be the first one to really solve it in a 100% satisfactory manner, but you're probably not the first one to face it. So I want to find myself in conversations with others that have a similar starting point from a technology perspective. This is what I'm using CCH for. This is what I'm using Thomson Reuters for. This is what I'm using Intuit for. Here are the other tools I have in firm management, portals, communications, and this is the problem I'm trying to solve. I say with those from a similar tech stack because if someone else is solving the problem from a very different tech stack, it means something for your future technology, not your current technology. So I want to find someone who's on first base with me in the same stadium and then find out how far have they gotten to second base? What challenges have they had? What issues have they discovered? Have they solved it, but maybe it increased revenue 3%, not 5%? Okay, is that worth it for you? Now we know we've got someone that might have a little bit of a roadmap for us to follow using that same technology stack. I got to tell you that this is an emotional component because we all have feelings about our existing technology, love and hate relationships. And this is going to make us get honest and say, hey, I've got to be able to set the emotion to the side. I hate that tool. Okay, that's fine. You hate it. I understand. Let's focus in back to the problem we're trying to solve and the impact it's got on our team and or our clients. What can we do in this tool, or how can we use the tool differently to help solve this problem? I've got to acknowledge that emotion from the team, maybe from my own self, and put it to the side and focus back to the problem that we are trying to solve. If we cannot clearly define the problem we're solving, it's not focused enough, the emotion about the vendor is going to win every time. Okay? It's going to win every time. And then we're going to miss possibly a faster and less expensive solution to the problem that we're facing. And we just have to ask ourselves, what's more important, my personal emotion about this? Or perhaps what's more important is a faster, less expensive solution to this particular problem that we are facing. All right. Who knew? Technology conversation, we'd end up talking about emotion. But hey, there we are. All right. So What does this mean for future technology? Okay, first of all, I want to say that this is going to help you narrow down options because there are a lot of options. In my earlier example, I mentioned some, perhaps this is something to do with workflow within client accounting services, knowing when is person A done and person B ready. Well, tools to manage CAS work within a firm have exploded over the last 4 or 5 years. There are a lot of them, and existing tools have kind of retooled themselves and are marketed in that way in a lot of ways. But if I can narrow down the problem I'm solving, I'm hoping to be able to narrow down the options. And if I can go to 10 from 10 to 5 or quickly move from 10 options at the surface to 5 real options, I'm better for it. This also allows us to focus on precision instead of possible benefit. Precision over possible benefit. I'll say this. Technology vendors and partners want to sell their solution. They know they're going to sell their solutions best when it's solving problems. But also we know that if they can show benefit, then they're going to have a better opportunity to sell. So the vendors out there that are selling us tools in the accounting space are showing us benefits of their tools left and right. I'm not saying they're being deceitful. I'm saying they're focused on all of the different benefits. And if you, as you evaluate your technology options for future technologies, allow yourself to get pulled into, ooh, look, solution A has 13 benefits. Solution B only has 8. Let's go with solution A. We've got a problem. Because what if 7 of the 8 benefits of solution B are directly targeted to the precise problem you're having, but only 4 of solution A are? You may look at that and go, yeah, but there's more runway with solution A. Maybe. But runway for what? Well, the future. The future of what? Is that one of the problems we're trying to solve right now? This will help you cut through the glitter and the sparkle of all the features that vendors have. And they've got some great features. But are they going to solve the specific problem you've got? Okay, I want to use the specific problem to solve to navigate through these conversations. And oftentimes to direct demonstrations from vendors, to direct my research online of, yeah, I don't care what you're doing over in these other areas. This is the problem I'm solving. Okay. I also want to pay attention to what other firms are doing and have done. Hey, a vendor says, look, we can solve your problem. Here's how we do it. I want to ask for social proof. I want to see the testimonials. I probably want to talk to some references. It feels outdated, but I think it's necessary. I think it is necessary to get some verification that other firms are using it to solve the problem. I've talked to a number of firms who got a list of referrals from a software vendor. And I've heard this enough times. It's got to be multiple vendors, not just one. And they said, all right, hey, that's a good list. They gave me like 6 or 7 to call. I'm going to go ahead and acquire the tool. And then after I sign it and we start to implement, I'm calling these firms only to find out that the firms that bought it were solving very different problems. Just because a software company has a great referral doesn't mean that person was solving the same problem as you. So we need to make sure we get that good verification. But again, we're tied back to the precision and we're tied back to what is that problem that we're trying to solve. Okay. I will also say this on the future technology end. Sometimes we think that this means we have to be an expert in certain types of technology, right? So when we say what we're trying to do is going to require AI. Okay, great. Does that mean you have to be an expert in AI? Or does that mean you have to be an expert in the problem you're trying to solve? and be able to identify whether the vendors have implemented the right tools, no matter what kind of technology it is, that'll allow you to solve this issue. You do not need to become the expert in the future technology when you are focused with the problem. Okay. I will also say this. You don't have to bleed, but you should be willing to lead. It might be a newer technology. But again, if I can go back to the focus problem to solve, lean on some of the verification of other firms, hey, I might be client 10 within this new technology. But if several of the first 9 solve the same problem I'm trying to solve with it, great. I'm not on the bleeding edge. We're still leading, but I've got a focus problem. I've got verification that others have used this tool to solve it. I don't have to worry that they're a relatively new software business or technology tool, right? I've got what I need, precise problem to solve, and that verification that it has solved it for other firms. Okay. So I cannot be afraid to be in a leading technology position. I don't have to be the first to ever do it. I don't have to be in that bleeding role. Okay. But I need to not be afraid to lead. I don't say, software hasn't been out for 3 years. I can't touch it. I think that's crazy in today's day and age. I think we're too scared. If we find ourselves saying that, too nervous about what the technology is, we're not confident enough what our problem to solve is. It's probably a hint. If you're worried about the longevity of the tool, one of the hints there is that, am I focused enough and real enough on the problem I'm trying to solve? Okay. All right. Let's move in here and talk a little bit about the impact on your business. And I want to sit here for a little bit because I think this is really important. The more targeted our change is, the more together we bring the team. Okay. The more targeted the change is, the more together we bring our team. Sometimes, because there are a lot of things that are constantly in motion, the team sits and feels like we're just changing everything for no reason. Hey, we want to be more efficient. Well, great. That message is worn out on your team right now. Your team does not care if you want to be more efficient. That's not a targeted change. This is a targeted change. Hey, team members, we found that we're exceeding budgets by 30 minutes on this particular step. Or we're 2 days delayed in getting work out to a client from our goal. We've identified there's a communication issue between person A being done and person B. We believe that as we fix that communication issue, we're going to go back within our goal of total turnaround time for this work. That's what we're targeting to solve for. We found a tool that's going to automatically detect when step A is done and send a communication to step B. And also, it's going to turn on neon lights around their monitor and let them know that the communication's in their email box. A little bit of hyperbole for today's session, okay? Now, that is a targeted change. Could I say we're trying to be more efficient in our communication? Yes. But that's not a targeted change message to bring your team together. Now the team goes, oh, this is going to help us really communicate with one another in a specific way. And I can hear where that specific item is. I can see the benefit to all of us and to our clients. This is good. This is a targeted change. We're going to work together with you on this change. Okay? That is a key impact of doing things in this way and having that real problem to solve. Now, the second bullet here, it might be encouraging or it might be scary. But solving problems surfaces more problems to solve from your team. Your first reaction to that is, thanks, Will, we've got enough, no more. I've got a list we can't deal with yet. Why on earth do I want more problems to solve? Well, I will say this. We live in enough of an evolving world, regulations, clients, the staff challenges we face, the technology that's shifting and moving. We will never be without things that cannot be improved. We'll never be without problems that shouldn't be fixed. Okay? If we do reach that point, our life will be very boring, and all of a sudden, our business will be at great risk. Great risk. So we should not be fearful of having more problems to solve. We should be fearful of having generic problems that are so big we can't define them. We don't know how to measure them. If those are the only problems we have, then we should be fearful. We should be encouraged when we start to see problems that are very focused and that can be measured. And when we solve problems, we communicate to the team, hey, we're trying to solve this problem. This is the impact it has. This is how we're going to measure success. Now, when the next person says, hey, I'm going to bring this to you, Will. Look, we solved that problem. That's great. I've got another problem over here. Can we solve this one? Then we have a natural communication lean in. If my team member doesn't tell me who it's impacting, I say, well, tell me a little bit more about who this problem is impacting. Tell me a little bit more about what this means for the client experience. Walk me through how you measure that it's taking you too much time. What do you mean by it takes too long? Is that days, weeks, hours, minutes? Tell me. In your world, what should that really look like? What would success look like? So now we can use the architecture of a successful targeted change to draw out and prioritize the other changes that are yet to come. I would rather have my team member bring to me a focused change that we know we can succeed on and elevate it above the list of everything else on our currently known problems and solve that one also, than to start going into another problem that only one person thinks is an issue. Okay? So I think this is a great job of prioritizing problems. Part of it is that focus allows for timelines. If you've got a targeted problem to solve, then I believe we can say, hey, we're going to measure success. If it's a focused problem, remember we talked earlier about bringing that list of vendors or solutions that can solve it from 10 down to 5. If I'm trying to evaluate 10 vendors, my timeline for deciding on which one is going to work is infinitely longer than if I've got this narrowed instantly down to 4 or 5, right? It is how do we get there? Focus. When we're going to measure, we're going to test some things. Great. Only test what matters through the specific problem to solve. Now I can limit my testing time period. Now I feel like I've got to test every nuance within the tool, but I'm really testing the things that are trying to solve the problem. Focus allows for timelines. There is nothing more discouraging to your team member in the midst of technology change than timelines that mean nothing. Well, we're evaluating, we're putting in a new package to deal with our reviews and compilations. Fantastic. When? Well, it's going to take some time. What does that mean? We don't know, right? We've got to be able to say, hey, this is the problem we're solving. We're going to be able to measure our potential suitors over the course of the next 3 weeks. We'll move into implementation. And here's the timeline that we're going to go on. If we're going to fall on our face and have to adjust the timeline because we're trying to solve for one focused thing, we're going to understand the impact of failure faster. And we're going to be able to communicate to its timeline and impact the timeline more strongly. And the more real you are about timelines and the communicating of them, the better the buy-in is for the change from the team. The easier it is for them to bring a problem to solve to you and say, ooh, here's one, and know whether it's going to be worked on, right? These things feed one another. I will also say this. Looking at existing technology first is going to keep your capabilities that you already own front of mind. There is so much value that comes from saying, hey, we're trying to solve this communication problem. What tools do we already have that maybe we're not using in a way that could help solve this? Even if you work through that conversation internally and go, we need a new technology piece because we don't have anything to solve it, that conversation, you, especially if you're maybe just, and I should just, if you are the dedicated IT professional, or maybe you're a part-time IT professional, new small firms, you know what I'm talking about, part-time IT professional, right? But hey, I'm going to go in here, I'm going to dig through and know, all right, we listed several things that this tool could do, but it's not going to solve the problem. But we've identified 3 different capability areas that we aren't using really well right now. What's next on my list of problems to solve? Do I need to more quickly think of the solution because we've got some unused componentry that's at our disposal, at the ready to go through? This could have a great impact in your business, maybe not for that problem, but potentially for the problem that is next in line to solve. Now, I don't believe that this just impacts your business. I also believe that this impacts your clients as well. When we start to put the focus on solving problems internally, that focus begins to naturally spill outward. I've gone 40 minutes or so in our presentation and have not used the words advisory services. First of all, you're welcome. Okay. But secondly, it's time. It's time. All right. A lot of firms that are wrestling with really making a substantive change into the advisory relationship with clients are wrestling with the area of, how do I really surface problems for them and then find a way to go after and solve them? But if we start solving problems that are very focused internally, now our team starts to go, oh, well, we had turnaround time issues we had to solve. There's a new technology piece that's there. My client's been talking about inventory issues. Can I use the same methodologies about being focused, looking at specific solutions they already own before looking externally, setting some measurement goals, and help them solve some problems that maybe historically we haven't done? Even if it's just through conversation or advisory conversations, the focus on solving problems is going to naturally spill outward with your team. Okay. Secondly, focus change is going to help minimize unintended consequences of change. All right. Every time we bring in a new solution to solve a problem, or a new solution because it's nice and fancy, if we aren't focused with what we're doing with it, we get all kinds of natural consequences that are not intended, they weren't thought of. So if I bring in a new tool to help with my communication internally, and it also has another client portal that's part of it, now all of a sudden some staff discover that, start using the client portal. Now we've got yet another, I'm going to assume you guys at least have 3 or 4 right now. Now we've got another client communication tool that wasn't what we intended, but now we've got another one to manage, another one to teach clients, another one to administer externally and internally. We didn't mean for that. It just kind of happened as part of the change. Why? Probably because in our change we weren't focused enough. Hey, we're using this tool to solve the internal communication gap. Now, as we implement their external tools, let's turn off privileges so that those aren't showing up and we don't have that, right? Let's not communicate about this area. Let's give permissions, restrictive. We want to focus in through this change. If we're not focused, we're going to say, well, we got a new tool, let's use everything. Well, wait a minute. We didn't get the new tool to use everything. We got the new tool to solve this problem in this way. We're going to measure it like this. Okay. It's got to go back to that plan. I will also say this. Your clients who want to grow and evolve like doing business with like-minded businesses. Your clients who want to grow and evolve want to know that you are growing and evolving as well. I think even if you're changing things that don't face the client at all, I think you want to tell them, hey, clients, want to let you know, just like you want to grow your businesses and evolve and improve, so do we. We're excited. We've just implemented a tool to help us with our communication internally. we're looking forward to being more effective with our turnaround time overall. We think this is going to help you because it's going to help us get your work done better. I don't have to explain everything, but our clients are going to go, oh, you're continuing to improve and grow. I like that. I want to stick with you. Maybe hearing that helps them go, hey, we've been struggling with some issues. Is there some things we can do there? And we start to feed some of that advisory business, or at least strengthen those advisory style relationships with our clients. The last bullet on the screen that I'll mention here is that the focus on problem solving is really going to help drive communication clarity as a priority. Internally in firms, we are awful at communication and internal marketing and clarity. Hey, we're all busy. We're moving 100 miles an hour. I got 2 people that are trying to do this. Just go and do it. We don't need to tell anybody else in the firm what we're doing. Well, hold on a minute. Other people work with those 2. If those 2 are going to be 100% focused on solving this problem, that's going to impact how they work with everybody else. Shouldn't we set an expectation? Shouldn't they understand why? Hey, Jim and Sally are going to go after this internal communication issue we've been having. Got a new tool we think is going to be great. They're going to spend 2 weeks testing this out. We've reallocated some of their other work to some of the rest of you so they can focus and get this done quickly, and we can reach our go, no-go decision in a hurry. Please give them some grace during that particular time. Here's where you can go if you need help and they're not available, right? Now all of a sudden, I'm trying to solve this problem, and I've got a timeline behind it and some expectations because the problem is focused. Now when I communicate, I can have greater levels of clarity with what's going on, internally or externally, right? Hey, we've got a new tool. We've got a new portal tool, not just because we hate having the clients remember their passwords, but because these are the things that we're trying to drive into. The more focused of what I'm solving, the more clear I can communicate, both internally as well as externally. I hope that this has been very valuable for you today to say, hey, I want to make sure that the problems we're solving are focused. I can write it down. It's real. There's specific instances. It impacts the team, impacts the clients, not just one individual. And then I know what the measurement is. For many of you, that measurement might be the first piece you have to go and say, all right, I've got the problem down, and I think we're relatively focused. I'm going to say the problem to someone else internally to make sure they understand it. Say, hey, is that focused enough? Get in, but I got a little bit of work to do on the measurement piece. Is it time or dollars? Which one? How are we going to measure where we are today? And what are we going to set as an improvement target? So when we first go look at internal tools that we have, we know what we're trying to achieve. And if none of our internal tools allow us to achieve that, and we start to go to external tools that we don't currently own, we are able to keep laser focused amongst all the marketing material that's out there that we're truly trying to solve that problem. And throughout that process, we're looking for that peer verification. Who else has wrestled through this already that's similar to us? Who else has had success? And in what way, so we can move forward with confidence? All of that comes by a focused problem to solve. I hope, again, that this has been beneficial for you. I'd encourage you to stay fairly active on LinkedIn. Encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn. Feel free, my email address is there if you'd like to shoot me an email. When I have a quick chat just about maybe a current problem you're trying to solve, you want my input on if that problem is focused enough as you go to tackle it, or things I've seen others that are similar to you do, reach out, set up a conversation. Not looking to charge for that kind of a conversation. Let's just have it. I want to assist you as you make your journey forward with your firm. Joel, let me turn it back over to you for the closing comments.
Thank you so much, Will, for hosting today's webinar, and thank you to all of our attendees. And with that, enjoy the rest of your day.
Today's event has ended. To earn CPE, go to earmark.app or scan the QR code on the screen. Then log in or create your free account. Search for the course by tapping on the magnifying glass icon on the home screen and then entering the name of this event. It takes a few days to make the course, so if you're attending this event live, Keep an eye out for an email letting you know when the course is available. Pass the quiz to earn your CPE, then tap the button to email yourself a certificate. Stay tuned for more events from Earmark. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon.